So this is a little bit surprising. It looks like we're going to be seeing more Lord of the Rings films, according to this article from the Hollywood Reporter, reporting about how there are new Lord of the Rings movies in the works at Warner's and New Line. And you may be wondering, well, how is that happening? Well, let me tell you. Back in August of 2022, this company called the Embracer Group, which is kind of a holding company for different services, different video game companies and cultural providers of different things like comic books, like Dark Horse Comics. They've got THQ, which, video games. So they hold these things. Last year in August, they bought Middle Earth Enterprises. They acquired all of them. And that means they bought the intellectual property catalog and worldwide rights to the motion pictures, video games, board games, merchandising, theme parks, and stage productions relating to the iconic fantasy literary works, The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, as well as matching rights in the other Middle-earth related literary works authorized by the Tolkien estate, maybe some of the Adventures of Tom Bombadil or some of the other tertiary books in there. They don't specify. And those have yet to be explored. So that's the Embracer Group. And so the Embracer Group now holds the motion picture rights. Notice this doesn't say the TV rights. That's Amazon. Amazon has the TV rights to The Lord of the Rings. And that's where we got the show which shall not, The Rings of Power. Sorry, I'll name it. So anyway, let's go over this article. So Warner Brothers has now a deal with the Embracer Group to create more films. It was announced in the investor call this past Thursday, February 23rd. And they say it's going to hark back to the 2000 glory days when the studio was minting money with the Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, the Dark Knight trilogy. So they haven't told us what this film is going to be, what these are going to be, right? They already have the war, like they mentioned here, the War of the Rohirrim announced, which also comes from the appendices. And that's an anime full-length feature film about Helm Hammerhand and Helm's Deep, and essentially the start of Rohan, of how we see it, how we know it in The Lord of the Rings. What's positive here is that they have engaged Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, those who wrote The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But they did say that Warner Brothers and the Embracer Group have kept us, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, Peter Jackson, in the loop every step of the way. And we look forward to speaking to them further to hear their vision for the franchise moving forward. So good. Get the people that created it right. Now, maybe they learned from The Hobbit. The Hobbit, if you make one movie out of those three movies, you probably end up with something all right. But those three movies should not have been made. I'm hoping that by going back to Jackson, at least they're starting on solid footing. Amazon with The Rings of Power did not do that. They brought in passionless corporate people who had been in the industry with no real experience, no passion to bring Lord of the Rings to life. They brought them to bring The Rings of Power to life, and we saw what happened there with a hackneyed story of different storylines from the Second Age brought together in ways that just don't work, with new characters that nobody likes, and writing that is amateurish at best, like amateurish, like high school amateurish at best. Rocks look down, ships look up. I rest my case. So with this here now, they're telling us that the movie rights are obviously going to be focused on the Third Age. And it's possible now that Warner Brothers could focus on new stories centering on Tolkien's big guns such as Gandalf, Bilbo, and Aragorn, which would be the biggest mistake they could make, right? Think of Solo. Do you remember Alden Ehrenreich as Solo? No, nobody really wants to. He did not do a good job because we knew Han Solo as Harrison Ford. If you try and create stories with Gandalf and Bilbo and Aragorn, their story has been told, right? We know the end of their stories already. We know that Aragorn dies. We know that Bilbo and Gandalf sail into the West. So trying to create stories around that would not be good. Certainly they will probably try with Aragorn because, right, he's king of Gondor. He can, I guess, fight the leftover orcs. They can go on marauding raids to find the orcs that are left over. I don't know. Maybe some cave trolls getting back Khazad-dûm. We're going to see interesting plans that they have for these stories because, yeah, sure, there's a world that you could tell. But here's my thing. Here's my take is that Tolkien already wrote a lot of great stories. He set the standard for what a fantasy tale is like. In our podcast, Windows on the West, we recently read through the Battle of the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. And it sometimes reads like an incredible screenplay of how to shape a battle with characters that have been established through chapters before and bringing them together into a battle that ends in tragedy, but with some hope. And so like these stories, these great tales are there to be told, but they don't have the rights. Maybe that's a good thing. I kind of think it is. But those are some great stories. We're never going to see those until the Tolkien estate gets rid of those. So what we'll see is we'll probably see the Rangers of the North, right? We're going to see the show that's going to be about Aragorn's buddies protecting the lands of the North and the Shire so that we can see the hobbits and we can go back to Rivendell and young Aragorn probably. That's probably what we're going to get, something like that, because you can't go back to the characters that Peter Jackson established at this point. They're too iconic, and they're still 20 years, I think, is still too fresh in everybody's head. I mean, right, the two greatest trilogies probably in cinema of all time: Star Wars, the original Star Wars Empire, Jedi, and then Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King. You put me on a deserted island, and I would be pretty happy for a pretty long time with those films in place. So Warner Brothers, you've got a lot of work to do, and it's our job as fans of Tolkien. Just like, we learned our lesson with Rings of Power. We got to hold their feet to the fire. We got to keep them honest. And if today's cultural message becomes more important than the stories that Tolkien told, we know that these are going to fail, that they will not recapture any of the magic from Tolkien or even from Peter Jackson's work. So let's remind them that we all love Tolkien, that we all love the stories that he wrote, and that a lot of us love, some more than others, Peter Jackson's films. And don't put today's messages into Tolkien's stories. Hey, make sure you subscribe by clicking that button right there. And you can become a member by clicking the join button right next to it, where for $5 a month, you'll get access to our private Discord channel. You get access to our extended videos. You get custom emojis and avatars for any comments right here on YouTube or any live streams that we have.